first video. And we're going to focus primarily on just step 1 in this video. So when doing this, what I want to be able to do is I want to set one of the equations where z equals something. So where I have everything equaling a number right now, like equaling number 4 in the black equation, or 1 rather in the red equation, and -1 in the green, what I want to do is I want to take one of these and set z equals. And so to do that, it doesn't really matter which one. I like to pick the one that has lower numbers. In other words, mostly 1s and 2s, which a lot of it is in this case. But you can do it to any of them. And theoretically, you could probably set all of any variable equal also. But we're going to set z because that typically seems like it's going to be the easier one to do. So what do I mean by this? Well, I'm looking at 3 equations. So I'm going to pick one. And it really doesn't matter which one you pick. Over time, you'll kind of get used to looking at it and deciding which will probably be the easiest to do. So I'm going to look at this equation right here. X minus 2y equals z. I'm sorry, x minus 2y minus z equals -1. So I'm going to take it over here. Let's get rid of it. Not get rid of it, but let's move it away from the other ones so we can distinguish it. Okay. So I've broke my equations up now. And I'm going to use this green one to get my first variable solved for. And I want to set it equal to z. To do that, I'm going to circle the variable I'm looking for. And again, in this case, it's z. And I have to isolate it. And I got to get everything else away from it, right? Think of when I put that circle around there, think of it as anchoring that z in. That z cannot move. But it also has to be quarantined, right? It's got to be by itself. Everything else has to get away from it. So I'm going to do that by first subtracting x. All right, so that I eliminate this term, x being the first term. And what I do to one side, I have to do to the other. And then I want to get rid of my second term. So my second term says -2y. So I'm going to add 2y so that my second term cancels to 0. And what I do to one side, I do to the other. So now I have set z equal to something, or in this case, a -z. So what I now have is -z equals -1 minus x plus 2y. Now I could leave it like this, but to make it simpler for the rest of the process, I really would like to have z as a positive and not as a negative. So I can get rid of this negative sign by multiplying all terms by a -1. And what that does is that allows me to flip the signs while maintaining all the numerical values. And so I can change this. I can change the signs on the variables, and again, the numerical values, the 1s, the 2s, they all remain the same. And this works as long as I do it, as long as I multiply all the terms. It won't work if I only multiply a couple of the terms. I have to multiply all terms on both sides to do that. So now I just simply say -1 times -z. The negative times the negative gives me a positive. The 1 times a z just gives me 1z equals, and then I'm continuing on my factoring, -1 times -1, negative times a negative is a positive, 1 times 1 gives me 1. Okay, -1 times -x, the negative times a negative gives me a positive. The 1 times an x gives me just an x. And then the -1 times the 2y, the negative and the positive makes for a negative. And then the 1 times the 2y makes for a 2y. So in step 1, which is what this is, I've taken one of the original 3 equations. Remember, this was an original equation right here. Okay, this was the original. This is my original equation. And I have gone and I have solved for z. And I said now that z equals something. So I have what I've done is I've created a value for z. Okay. So that will complete step 1, and it completes the first video in this segment. for systems of 3 linear equations. Again, this is a long process, a 3-step process, and there'll be a few videos on it. This being the first. So take a look, see if you understand how that happened. You can practice by doing that to any of the terms or any similar problems in practicing just getting used to setting z equal to something.